In higher ed, we're all looking for big wins, but reducing a 75% application abandonment rate and achieving a 90% conversion rate, that's next level transformation. Michael Bettersworth, CMO at Texas State Technical College, shares how they achieved this by streamlining the application process with Element 451.
Our Element journey began out of a necessity. We were switching to a new SIS, and the application process was going to pose some real usability issues for us. We felt that application was going to hamper our enrollment. So we began quickly to evaluate different CRMs, different applications. So for context on that, our conversion rate with the prior application had about 75% abandonment of people clicking apply to submit. And the first weeks after going live with Element, we saw an 80% conversion, and that's now up to 90. So improving the usability of that application on the front end process has had a significant advance in our intake.
When technology works for students, it works for you. Visit element451.com to see how simplifying the application process with artificial intelligence will lead to significant results for your institution.
If we ask the question, what do students and families actually care about this year? It's that they want proof and not just promises.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing over 15 years of edtech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Hello and welcome to the Higher Ed Pulse. I am your co-host, Seth Odell, and I'm joined, as always, by the illustrious and intelligent Mallory. Mallory, how you doing?
I love it. The ego boost I always look for when you open these episodes. It's my favorite part of the day.
I try.
What have you been up to, Seth?
I'm just back from a weekend trip with my coach, Marshall. I mentioned before I work with an executive coach, a gentleman named Marshall. We spent a couple days doing a little offsite planning and helping me kind of figure out what I want to do this year. It's been really helpful, helps me kind of address all my many shortcomings. I don't know, but have you ever worked with a coach before?
No, but I think honestly, listening to you over the past year or so talk about how beneficial it's been for you, it's on my list of things I want to look into this year. Investing in ourselves personally really matters, right? And yeah, I don't know. I definitely blame you for my peaked interest in this, but I'm curious.
Awesome. I encourage everybody to think about it. As we move up in our careers, it's increasingly isolating, right? And the one-on-ones with our bosses are still great, but they're very business focused. And so who's kind of calling us on some of our BS, who's checking in on how we're feeling, who's helping us realize gaps and how we approach things. All that stuff is really helpful in coaching. Yeah. That's great. It's been really good. Well, listen, Mallory, we have a big topic today. We are talking about the ROI reality check, what students and families actually care about in 2025. And I think this topic is so important because, we're heading in, obviously, to the spring season. And for folks that are maybe down on apps for fall, there's a lot of concern about what can you get from late push. And for folks that are maybe strong on apps, there's still always that concern about yield. And I just think it's worth checking back in. I'm so excited for this topic to talk about, what do students and families actually care about in 2025? What are they actually looking for? So I think the way we're going to do this is we're going to bounce back and forth and share a few ideas that we both have. I'm going to go first and hit you with one, and we'll just see where we go. And so the first one is the obvious one. I get a little bit more peripheral as we go, but the first one is perceived probability of success. And what I mean by success is future professional success. So probably perceived probability of professional success. And that comes in many forms. And we're seeing increased conversations, especially from parents, but also from students that are more and more focused on like, what are the career pathways? Where are graduates going? I'm hearing so much feedback from campus partners about the tactical questions parents are asking. What are graduates making? How many of them are employed? So all those stats, a lot of schools track. People are looking for those. They're also asking about like internship availability, like what's the plan? And really, it's not like any one thing. And I think it's really important that my takeaway is that even though they're asking a bunch of these different questions that they're looking for, the reality is they're all tracing back to the same thing, which is that internally they're creating some kind of calculation of perceived probability of professional success. And it's just like, is this going to pay off in the long run? And there's a lot of potential inputs that can go into that conversation, but they all end up being this sort of subjective, sometimes subconscious equation, I think, that prospective students and their parents are running in their heads to try to determine, like, is this the place that's going to get me to where I want to go, even if I'm at a place in life where I don't even know exactly where that is.
Absolutely. And I think this is totally the right place to start. Transparency and clarity are so important in this category because every institution, like there's no standardization within the industry about how outcomes are measured. And so this can be quite confusing for families to navigate from one college to the next.
Great call
and
out.
so there is totally a need for data transparency around here and maybe even some industry-wide standardization, but that is a topic for a different day. I'll say Georgia State is a great leader here. They have what is called stepping blocks. It's a digital career toolbox that the University Career Services manage. And so students can log in with their ID and then they get national employment data up against GSU specific data. They can take like career personality quizzes. There's a digital career counselor. There's tons of resources. And so for the current students, right, like that is such a valuable tool, but that is the kind of thing that enrollment marketers need to be touting in this time when we know that students are making this critical decision about final applications or yield. Like they want to know what is going to happen to them once they graduate. They want to know what the likelihood is that they will even graduate. And so show them the tools that you are giving your current students to make them successful. That can be really powerful in marketing.
I love that. And I have a very tactical tip because if you're an institution that's not currently measuring this, it can feel like a massive mountain, right? Because it's like, who's doing this? Is it, is it instructional or is it like IR? Like who internally is going to track this data and help us figure it out? If you don't have outcome data available, the first, fastest, simplest thing you can do is go to your institution's LinkedIn page and just click the alumni and look at where they live and who your top alumni employers are according to LinkedIn. I did this exercise with one private institution that was out of the Seattle area, and they had never really looked at it. And their top alumni employers were literally Microsoft, Amazon, like all these amazing companies, obviously based in Seattle, so that makes sense. But it's like when you're talking about this, you can still say, well, according to LinkedIn, our top alumni employers are Amazon, they're Microsoft, they're LinkedIn. It's like, this is impressive stuff. And now, mind you, that is not as substantive as actual, like, quantifiable data from your alumni. And that's what you should strive to get. But if you don't have that, you can find some of this still online to at least be able to have like a structured conversation with folks.
All right. So if like what you called the perceived probability of success / outcomes, right? The layman's term, is topic one.
Yes. Yes, you said it in one word, not four. Yeah, that totally exposes my often embrace of long and expanded conversation to
that's what keeps the listeners coming back, Seth. Let's be real.
You just outed me big time on that. I love you. Outcomes. Yeah. Yeah, outcomes. Okay.
Right. Well, all right. Well, I won't get as cutesy, but so like if outcomes is A, then I think B has to be like tuition, cost clarity. Families expect that you are going to be transparent about these things. And we all have been conditioned that there's a sticker price now. And so especially for a first gen student who may be, limited in the support that their families can give them, understanding the total cost beyond that sticker price really matters. The fees, the housing, the meal plans, the books, like every hidden expense. And Financial aid does not always communicate as clearly as they should be, and explaining aid packages can be so confusing. I remember watching my mother, like, on her third daughter going to school, still just like slamming her head into the desk because what Skidmore was doing was totally different than what St. Mike's was doing, and how they broke these financial aid packages down. And when she had just sent 2 kids to St. Mike's, she got really used to that communication or that style. And then she switched, daughter goes to a different school. All of a sudden, it's like everything she had learned about financial aid went right out the window. So it's like, we can't forget the parents in this process because they're such a key stakeholder, but we have to be way clearer about what the total cost is and how it goes beyond that sticker price. And I'll give you a good example. University of Dayton and some other schools, right? They guarantee tuition's not going to increase for the 4 years that you're there. And when you can do something like that, that brings just an instant level of transparency. UNC Chapel Hill offers fixed tuition programs for in-state grads, and right? Like, you're eliminating surprises. Make that the first step.
Yes, I totally agree. And one nuanced example of that too is, how do you communicate price? And most folks communicate price at a unit level. And like, what the heck is a Carnegie unit? No one knows. No parents are. So it's like, don't communicate price by unit, communicate it by course, and then roll it up by program. And so make it as clear as possible. Now, some programs, I do understand that the course level can change. Put a range in. What's the cheapest it can be and the most if you take all the electives possible. And I do think like that's a simple example that would simplify some of that. And that's really, really key. I totally agree. One thing I'll riff with you on after that about price I think is really interesting is, I think not only when we talk about like what do folks actually care about, I think it's also what do they care about in what order. And I think families today in 2025 care about price and affordability before they care about fit. Historically, we used to see that people would take the campus tour and they'd go and then they would apply to a handful of schools afterwards. Like I grew up doing a road show with my parents in the car, going to 6 or 7 different institutions. We are seeing in our data across partners more and more that campus visits are being pushed as late as spring of senior year, which means that people are visiting after they've already applied. Like, most schools, 80% of your applications should be in by the end of your calendar year, so like by December. So the majority of your apps are in, but all of a sudden, more and more visits are coming after the fact, which means what we're seeing at least is that more and more families are not visiting until after they've been accepted and they understand price. That is a huge challenge, particularly for private institutions, because what we all know is that a lot of institutions have been built on this whole quote, I walked on campus and as soon as I did, I felt right at home, right? I knew as soon as I stepped on campus is like a common thing we hear. But what happens then if you don't step on campus because you were accepted and the price appears to be too high and you don't see a path to affording it? And then when you're taking your campus visits, you're not going to 5, 6, or 7 schools, you're going to 2 or 3, and they happen to all be the lower cost options because either you can't afford the private institutions and you don't have the emotional connection from a previous visit, or you're assuming you can't because the way it's communicated is a manner that alienates you and makes it feel less accessible. And so not only is price a factor, but I think it's also like moved earlier in the decision process. And so families certainly still care about fit, and like what's it, fit and feel maybe would be like the category, but I feel like fit and feel is suddenly coming after price, and I don't think that was the case when you and I went to school. That feels like a COVID and post-COVID era kind of a shift in the way people are thinking about it.
Yeah, 100%. Allison Tercio on the application, episode 59, actually, it dropped a few weeks ago. It's called Why Students Are Visiting Later and What Enrollment Marketers Can Do About It. Everyone needs to go listen. Go listen to that episode.
I would highly encourage folks to do that. I think it's a huge, huge conversation.
Think you know ChatGPT? Think again. Unlock advanced features like projects in Canvas at the AI Engage Summit's ChatGPT Secrets session on February 26. You'll be able to implement what you learn immediately. This free virtual event is a must attend. Register now at enrollify.org/engage.
One other one that I think is worth calling out is, like one that's always been a factor has been like safety and security. And safety and security is always a factor, especially for parents, candidly, probably more than students. Like I think a lot, and I grew up in upstate New York. A lot of my friends all wanted to go to school in New York City. A lot of them did. And a lot of their parents didn't necessarily, right? Because there's a sense of that. But I think there's a couple things that have shifted in the conversation around safety and security. One is around like campus protests. There's a lot of really interesting coverage of the past year about whether or not campus protests are going to have a negative impact impact on yield, and they had a negative impact on campus visits and tours, which had to be canceled, and that was one piece. The other is we're seeing an increase in just natural disasters. So obviously, like the fires that we saw in recent months out in Southern California and things, and in particular, there was fires like literally like on like the Pepperdine campus, and they were able to demonstrate an incredible preparation for that. But I do think that there is a heightened sense of anxiety culturally in general, and so I do think that like this safety security piece is not just like what are the crime stats near campus anymore, and it's like it's political, it's physical, it's related to natural disaster. It's just like a much broader piece, and I don't have an answer perfectly on how to address that, but I feel like that is like a larger piece of the consideration set for many than maybe perhaps it was in the past.
Yeah, I think the call to action here is like if you're not addressing this in your drip campaigns to accepted students, like don't wait for them to ask the question on this one, right? Like showcase your proactiveness in answering this question. And I think that's going to go a lot farther with parents as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What else do you have on the list for?
All right, I got one more.
Okay,
I got one more.
perfect.
And it's speaking about parents, and this one like drills really far down, but it's just simply engage them. Like that feels like an obvious thing to say, but you know what? I was actually listening to Jeremy Tiers. He did an episode in January on mission admissions, and he kind of pointed out in that episode that like it's the minority of institutions that are thoughtfully communicating with parents throughout the college decision-making process. And especially if you're a school that serves the traditional undergrad population, better involving and communicating with parents, like they are a key part of the decision-making. Like they may be saying to their son or daughter, like, you're only allowed to go to schools within a couple-hour radius of our home, or back to the tuition piece, right? They may be saying no to the road trip because of some perceived, beliefs around tuition costs or whatever. And what do the parents want to know? They want to know about safety, outcomes, and cost. Everything we have already talked about. It's not just, the cool new campus amenities or the academic rankings, which, yep, academic rankings do have their place and time. Like we want to think that we're going to the number one business program or whatnot. But, whether it's like a portal or a regular newsletter or whatever, like there are ways to keep families informed without overwhelming them.
Yeah, I think that's just a really, really good call out. And I think the only couple things I would add at the end of this is that when we talk about what students' families actually care about, there's also still table stakes that don't leave the conversation. Campus infrastructure and the overall like physical experience still matters for traditional undergraduate in particular. I don't know that we're fully in the lazy river era, which we certainly were like 15 years ago.
I think we're past it. I hope we are.
I hope, but there is like a downside to that conversation, which is that I see more and more institutions with like deferred maintenance, where like the buildings are getting older and older. I literally know of institutions that are like located in warm climates that don't have air conditioning in their dorms, and it's like well, we can't retrofit these buildings. And it's like, so there's perhaps not the same ceiling where we were chasing like sushi bars and lazy rivers, but there is a floor to the conversation of like, are the facilities still like attractive and high end and that piece? And the other one I'll say too, which is totally separate, is I do still think rankings matter. I'm not convinced specific rankings matter necessarily, but like there is still I think a cultural component that we in the industry may have moved on from them in many ways. And I feel like rankings as a value indicator have just really diminished among folks in the industry. But for folks outside the industry, like I think they still look to online to try to figure out like what third party is validating the quality of this. And so I still think that those are factors as well that we at least need to acknowledge. Whether or not we choose to participate in them, I still think they're a factor that some families care about in 2025.
Didn't you do a newsletter recently around value prop?
Yeah, so it was one of my big things was value prop qualifying, which was the probably biggest marketing tip, folks listening, is the best thing you can do is to take some of your best rankings and then qualify them until you're first. And so like, someone's like, oh, we're the 7th most affordable, master's in psychology program in the country. Great. Okay, that no one cares that you're 7th. That just tells everyone that there's 6 more affordable. So what you want to do is qualify your value prop to figure out, is there a way you can go from 7th to first? And the way you do that is like, okay, let's say you're in South Carolina. Okay, you might be 7th in the country, but are you the most affordable master's of psychology in South Carolina? And it's like, oh, actually, yes, we are. Well, now you can say South Carolina's most affordable masters of psychology. And now that is impressive. So you can qualify value props based on your location, whether it's your city or your state or your region. You can qualify them based on whether you're public or you're private. You can do it based on outcome volume, so like iPad's completion data. So are we the largest? Are we the most affordable? Are we the oldest? Are we the newest? And what you want to do is always find ways to take that ranking if you're 13th or 32nd and not say we're 32nd, but find a way to say we are, actually we're a top 5 California private Christian institution. Like, okay, cool. That's more impressive than saying you're 42nd in the country. And so if you're going to do rankings, qualify them for sure and find a way to go from 5th to 1st.
Well, as we wrap this one up, Seth, I feel like the big takeaway here as well, if we ask the question, what do students and families actually care about this year? It's that they want proof and not just promises. I feel like that distills down I'm channeling my inner you on that perceived probability of success there, right?
No, you're channeling you by distilling into just a few words rather than the many that I tend to spew. Yeah. Proof, not just promise. I love that. That is really, really well said. And I think, it's becoming a much more practical conversation and a little bit less emotional. I still think the emotional component is there and that matters. But it's really rubber meets the road practical about affordability and about outcome and a lot of those components. And I think it's not just what we message, but how is increasingly important. And that's probably the biggest takeaway for a lot of folks listening is like, how are we communicating price? How are we communicating outcome? And are there nuanced ways that we can do that improve the perceived probability of success for folks that are reviewing that?
Like you snuck that one in there one more time. I like it.
One more time. One more time. Well, it's great seeing you, Mallory.
Great seeing you too. And friends, if you've made it all the way to the end, please know that I'm getting pretty excited about the upcoming AI Engage Summit that's happening at the end of this month on February 25th and 26th. Visit enrollify.org/engage and you'll see the full agenda. You can register for free. It's virtual. There's really no reason not to. We'll send you all the recordings. Like I am giving you 2 afternoons of really great pro dev around AI. But if you need, a reason to go visit that site, we're doing a bunch of really cool 30-minute sessions this time. 2 of the standouts for me, one is going to be on ChatGPT's advanced features like search and Canvas. And then Artist Kadu, who you all know, co-hosts Generation AI, he's doing a session that is going to survey the 10 AI tools that you need in 2025. And since we all know, because we are up on AI, we know 2025 is the year of AI agents. We actually have 4 different sessions on that topic across the 2 afternoons. So this is a not to be missed virtual free event. Did I mention it's free? Just go and register and then pick and choose what you want to come to. It's going to be incredible. I don't know what it's like. It's like anything incredible that you can think of right now. That's what it is.
I love it.
Awesome. All right, friends, we will catch you next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.